Hello, I'm Jackie Scott and I'm Chief Executive of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation. This recording is for community groups considering applying for the Charles Burnett Memorial Fund's Our Community 2026. So I'm going to talk you through some of the requirements that we have for that fund. So what I'm going to cover today is a brief introduction to the work of Hampshire and Isle of Wight and Isle of Wight Community Foundation, in case you don't already know us, and then some detail about the Charles Burnett Memorial Funds, and then lastly, how to get in touch if you need to discuss your project. So firstly, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation, we're one of 47 community foundations in the UK, and we are what is called a place-based funder. That means that we are focused on a particular geography. And for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Community Foundation, that's Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth, and the Isle of Wight. And as local government reorganisation moves forward, our geography will remain basically the same, but each of the areas within it might change. We make grants on behalf of many different kinds of donors and funders, from philanthropists through to lottery funders and everything in between. We support grassroots community organisations. Generally speaking, that's small organisations turning over less than £1 million and often a lot smaller than that. And our core purpose, the golden thread that runs through all of our work, is our aim to tackle poverty and inequality. And every year we give out grants into our region of around about £1 million. So the grants team is comprised of myself and our grants administrator, Catherine. If you've applied for grants for us before, you will certainly know Catherine. So I'm full-time and Catherine is part-time. Just to give you a bit of a sense of how we categorise our grant making and how we look at the impact of our grant making, we have 6 impact themes. We ask grant applicants to select one of these themes for every single grant that we make. And all of our work fits in one way or another. All of our funding fits in one way or another against one of these themes. Poverty and inequality is the golden thread, but it also has its own theme, and that's for work where it is very specifically work like food banks and so on, employability and skills, flourishing communities, health and well-being. Those 4 are usually the ones that receive the bulk of our funding between them, and then crime and safety and the environment tend to receive a smaller amount of funding overall. So the Charles Burnett Memorial Funds. Now, the following few slides are quite detailed, and if you're listening to this webinar, I am sure is the information that you are looking for. So just to give you a picture of what those funds are, Charles Burnett III was local to Lymington and tragically died some years ago in a helicopter crash. And during his lifetime, he was a really generous supporter of many community groups and activities around the New Forest and beyond. And we are proudly managing funds from his estate. We've been looking after them for some years and have a few years yet left on the funding that we have available. So our Community 2026 is the key open grants programme for Charles Burnett funding this year. So it will start in 2026. There will be a second year for awarded grantees for 2027, and all grantees will be reporting to us in 2028. So it's 2-year funding. There is, so applicants can apply for up to £20,000 over 2 years. So that's a maximum of 10k per annum. There is a total of £170,000 available over that 2 years. So we would expect between 8 and 10 grants to be made. So it's going to be very competitive. The work funded must be for people within the New Forest and Waterside. So the New Forest as currently defined by New Forest District Council boundaries. Current Charles Burnett Memorial Fund grant holders are eligible to apply. All current Charles Burnett Memorial Fund grant holders have been contacted, so they know they have to complete the interim reporting. That is not relevant if you aren't holding a current grant through either of the Charles Burnett Memorial Fund recent open programs. Applications open on the 9th of March, so grantees or potential grantees will be able to apply from the 9th of March, and the window for application closes on the 14th of April. There will be a period of time after that for assessment. Assessments will be quite detailed, and we would expect that grantees know the outcome of their bids by late June, early July. There is a chance for you to discuss your project idea with me online on the morning of the 18th of March, and I'll give you information about how to arrange that later. So the funding aims to have one of the three outcomes, and the more of these outcomes your bid can talk to, the better, the stronger that would make your bid. So the three key aims are to support people in New Forest and Waterside to actually become and also to feel more connected to their local community. It's to support the building of meaningful links within or across communities, and to show how enabling communities to flourish can have other positive impacts. So on each of those points, that connectedness, you need to be able to talk in your bid about how the idea you have for your project will enable people to feel more connected to their local community and to be more connected to their local community. So how is your work building those links? When we say within or across communities, so it might be that your target audience is women on the waterside. That's absolutely fine. But it may be that your target community is older people across the forest. So you want to build those links across different communities. It might be in Hythe and in Ringwood, for example. And that can be all sorts of different permutations. Now, the point about enabling communities to flourish and how that can have other positive impacts, we want you to be able to articulate that. So you might have a walking group in the New Forest, and you might have facilitated walks so that you're building social connections amongst a certain demographic. But we want you to be thinking about what are the other impacts that might have. So the obvious one for that might be improved physical health outcomes, or it might be improved mental health outcomes. It might also be that it means that you get the opportunity to have informal conversations with people that you wouldn't otherwise have, so that you can refer them on to debt advice or that sort of thing. So we want you to be able to talk to how your intervention can enable other positive impacts as well. So we're also looking for sustained interventions. So one-off events are not what we're looking for through this funding. We want the work to be with the same cohort for a sustained period of time. And that would normally be for a year or for the whole 2-year period. If your project has a different time frame and would touch on different cohorts over a longer time frame, we can consider that. But we want to have sustained interventions. So something very short term is not likely to be successful, but something that is for a longer term, 6 or 9 months, you've got a chance there, but you need to articulate to us why you are delivering it with that model. So we need to be able to see that the target audience you're working with faces isolation or discrimination, or inequality in some way. You need to be able to show us that. Don't presume that we're experts on that. We might be, but don't presume that we are. So show us your evidence as to why that target audience faces isolation, discrimination, or inequality. And we want you to think about how you're going to show that the intervention has made a difference to the people you're working with. We are not imposing any kind of framework onto you, but we do expect that you are monitoring the evidence of impact and that you will be able to show the evidence of impact. If you're a community group that has a turnover of more than £1 million, you need to speak to us first before applying. In general, we'd be expecting groups turning over less than £1 million to be the focus of this fund. Okay, so we're on to the fourth slide about key information. Hopefully, I think it's the last one. So the New Forest is obviously a very special place to live and work and to enjoy if you have access to the special parts of it, if you're able to access the shore or the activities available to us in the forest. So we want you to be able to recognise the context of the New Forest when you are writing your bid. So show how living in the New Forest makes a difference to your client group, and that could be good or bad. But one example might be transport issues. So you might be talking about isolation and recognizing that your particular target audience in a small village doesn't have easy access to the services that are provided in Ringwood, for example. So we want you to reflect how living in the forest makes that difference to your client group. And we also would really like to see projects that are using the special nature of the New Forest as part of their intervention. So is it that you're working with a group of isolated older people from small villages who have limited access to transport, and you're bringing them to a certain place for walks in the New Forest in accessible paths that have a mental health impact, for example. So we want you to think about what are the resources that the New Forest offers, and how can you bring them into your project, reflecting its special nature as part of the intervention itself. All groups awarded funding through our Community 2026 Charles Burnett Memorial Fund Open programme need to make themselves available for a small number of learning events with other grantees. That will be around about 3 events over the period of the 2 years of funding, and they will be no more than a half day. They may be in person or they may be online. It will be a mix. And there is additional core funding available to enable this. So we'll inform successful grantees of that once their funding has been awarded. So you don't need to include that in your bids. It will be made available to you if you're awarded. And we've been running similar events for the last 3 years, and they're very useful for increasing your understanding of our expectations as a funder, but also an opportunity for networking and so on. And we will also be working with our grantee cohort to find from them what would be most useful for those learning events. So it's a good opportunity. So just to let you know what we can fund through this funding. So we can fund staff costs, costs of volunteers like mileage and DBS checks, activity costs, so that might be venue hire, or you might be hiring accessible bikes or something like that. So all of that kind of activity costs can be included in your bid. And we will also accept reasonable core costs. So that's what does it cost you to run your organisation. So we will make a contribution to that as part of this funding. We will fund equipment, but it's unlikely we will fund any capital items. So equipment might be, the materials to put on an activity that may last for longer than the life of the project, like mobile football goals, but we won't be likely to be funding a roof or a bathroom redevelopment type of funding. So I want to give you just a quick picture of some of the things that have been funded through our community, because this is the second opportunity for applications for funding. We ran a program in 2024 under the same theme. So these are all real examples of projects that were funded through this funding. So one was a women's wellbeing group in Hythe, where it was a small cohort of women, and they were coming together every week for a series of activities, all sorts of different activities, including walks in the New Forest. And that was facilitated by experienced staff so that the benefits of coming together were able to be captured through using that kind of facilitated approach. An advice and friendship group for young people with learning disabilities in Totten. So young people with learning disabilities at the college in Totten, who are in a new environment for them and maybe don't have the confidence to create the social bonds that other young people may be able to do. So those were bringing those young people together in that environment with facilitated sessions to help them get to know each other and to create those bonds for those couple of years they're at college in that new environment. This is an interesting one because by and large funding for this program is expected to be for group work, but one particular grant we made was for one-to-one support for people who were in mental health crisis. And the purpose of that was to be able to bring those individuals to the point where they're able to take part again in wider social activities. So recognizing that at the point of very serious mental health crisis, it may not be possible or appropriate for you to be brought into a group scenario, but the support was to enable people to get to the point where they could. And in that particular organisation, there was follow-on support available. And then another group was funded for weekly sessions for young people who were considering their gender or sexuality. Very low provision for that in the New Forest. So that was an important project for us to look at. And that again was bringing young people who were in a similar position in New Milton and Marchwood and giving them the opportunity to, ask the questions that they may have with experienced facilitators and with other young people who are in a similar situation. So I hope that gives you a bit of a sense of the type of things that we've funded through this program. So just moving on to how you apply. So the window for applications opens on Monday, the 9th of March. You must apply using our online application form, and on the 9th of March, it will go live on that link, which is https://hiwcf.org.uk/grants-for-groups/. When you're applying, you can save the form and it will email you a link to go back to it. You also can download a list of the questions from that page so that you can practice writing it into a Word document if that's easier for you. If you do have questions, we do encourage you to contact us if you're unable to find the information on our website. So do contact us by phone or email. Bear in mind that Monday to Thursday is when we're able to answer those questions. And just bear in mind, we don't close all of a sudden early if we have reached a certain volume of bids. Everybody who applies by the close date of the 14th of April are able to be considered. Every application form has a 10-question eligibility section, and that's to confirm that you are eligible for our type of funding. So it will ask you questions about whether or not you have a constitution, whether or not you have 3 unrelated directors, and so on. Those are all our core eligibility questions. As soon as you've completed that, provided that you're able to pass those 10 questions, it will take you straight through to the application form. If you don't pass all of those 10 questions, get in touch. Some things are negotiable, some things are not. So we would be able to clarify that with you if you got in touch. I would encourage anybody considering applying for this funding to look at it early, not late, because it will take you time to complete your application. So that's why we leave the window open for so long, but I would encourage looking at it earlier rather than later. Don't rush your bid for this program. I'm planning on holding a series of 15-minute meetings with potential new applicants, and I've reserved the morning of Wednesday, the 18th of March to do that. So that gives applicants time to have a look at the application form online, think about projects, and where you're stuck and feel like you haven't got enough information from our website to be able to answer the question, you can then have that time to talk through with me what may or may not work in the context of this program. If you've received a link to this video from Sarah at Community First Wessex, please liaise with her about a time. And if you haven't received it that way, please contact me directly at ceo@hiwcf.com. I would encourage you to really have a think and be clear about what you think you want to apply for before that meeting, if we're holding one, because you have a very limited time in that meeting, and I want to be able to ask you questions that are very specific to you and your context and your project, rather than general questions about when the fund closes and so on. So please make sure you've informed yourself as much as possible in advance, and that you're as clear as possible about what you think you want to submit for that program in advance of that meeting. If it's impossible for you to meet on the 18th of March, we can arrange another time. As you can imagine, my diary also has its pressures. So ideally, if you're available on the 18th of March, that would be the best time to try and have that conversation. So if you do need any more information in the meantime, you can either call us on 01962 798 700 Monday to Thursday, or email grantsadmin@hiwcf.com. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any questions. I hope you found this helpful. I look forward to seeing your applications when they arrive. Thank you.